growing market that is everywhere in the world. So I'm going to talk today a little bit about the history of games, where actually video games came from, where they are today, and where they might be going to in the future. And talk a little bit about myself, how I got into games. I've been in the games industry 35 years. This is me back in 1975. I launched a game called Dungeons and Dragons in the UK with a school friend of mine called Steve Jackson. And one important thing about Dungeons and Dragons that taught me the fact that it was the very first role-playing game, had a huge influence on all games, not just board games or role-playing games, but also computer games. You know, what would World of Warcraft have been without the invention of Dungeons and Dragons, not the game that it is today? But also, a lesson I love to talk about is about the value of creating original intellectual property. How you determine your own destiny by having your own IP. And Dungeons and Dragons wasn't actually ours. When we started Games Workshop, we were a licensee a licensor of the game. And then when we lost that license because Games Workshop was being requested to merge with TSR, who owned Dungeons and Dragons, we said no, but we had to replace D&D with our own property. And anyway, just moving on, I'll just talk about this is the very first Games Workshop store. This is the opening day in 1978. We were very delighted to see so many people interested in the kind of games that we were trying to make at that time. And this is how the Games Workshop models are today. So, extraordinary advances, over 300 stores now. Games are promoted through White Dwarf magazine, and of course Warhammer is the most famous intellectual property game at Workshop. And the reason Warhammer came about was, as I said earlier, Dungeons and Dragons was not ours. We had to replace it. And from that day and to today, at Eidos, I've always been interested in original intellectual property, something that belongs to us, the company. You don't have to take a license. As long as it's popular, you will benefit from it going forward. So many companies in the computer space are work-for-hire companies acting as a service for other people. I think you can control your own destiny if you create your own IP, market it, leverage it, license it, and you can then build real value in your own companies with your own properties. And to build your own content, especially in the digital world, allows you to be hugely successful on a global basis. So these are just some early lessons from all. So say Games Workshop today, huge company, publicly quoted in the UK. I sold out the company in 1991. Fantastic brands, some great properties. So many Games Workshop titles are now licensed to video games companies, and obviously Warhammer 40K is a successful video games franchise as well. But the value really goes back to Workshop, who owns the IP. From Games Workshop doing multiplayer role-playing games, Steve and I came up with an idea to attract a wider audience, go more mass market with role-playing. I suppose you could say this was a casual game based on a franchise which is D&D. And we came up with the very first interactive game books, a system we call Fighting Fantasy. These were good. Thank you very much. So Fighting Fantasy was branching narrative, and again, quite an influence on today's adventure games in the computer games world. These are the game books that you start off with to make choices, usually in the fantasy world of turning left or right, or if you don't find a key. Can we have some sound, please? We did a sound check before. 1996, not 1995 when Tomb Raider came out. So software sells hardware, and the consoles in the home took up a huge degree in the mid-90s with the launch of PlayStation from Sony. And today, of course, there are a myriad of platforms on which are games enabled for everybody who wants to play games on. So if you look at what's happening, a lot of people don't understand the size of the industry. It's bigger than DVD, bigger than cinema box office, bigger than music, bigger than books.
I never asked for this. If you want to make enemies, try to change something. The year is 2027. It's a time of great innovation and technological advancement. It's also a time of chaos and conspiracy.
Breaking news. The riots continue in the streets of Detroit. Protesters rallying inside of Seraph Industries, one of the world's leaders in the controversial science of human augmentation.
These people live. They're like ghosts. Always in the shadows. Always hiding behind lies. Proxy soldiers. And we can fight them. They cannot stop us. They cannot stop the future. I never had a choice of what happened to me. How do you feel, Adam? The body may heal. The mind is not always so resilient. Corporations have more power than government. Everyone's fighting for power, for control. Help! Please!
Kind of looking game, and yet monumentally successful because people can make their own real world. The only rule is they have to be underground at night before the monsters come to hunt you down. But 3.5 million people have bought Minecraft at $10 a pop, so Notch Pearson's done a fantastic job there. The thing about these games is that they create very valuable intellectual property. Angry Birds, they've sold over 1 million soft toys now. They've leveraged that IP through merchandising and licensing to get a new incremental stream of income. And the one lady the one piece of IP that I've been associated with all of her life, really acted as a father for her, is Lara Croft. And I'm going to talk to you now a little bit about Lara, the rise of Lara from a stick sketch on a piece of paper to a multi-million-dollar franchise with movies attached.